Hey there, welcome. Today we got a 4L60 on the bench instead of a 2000 Chevy Express with a 4.3 liter V6. This thing has over 200,000 miles on it, never been out, and it has delayed engagements in drive and slipping real bad 1 to 2. So owner wants to keep the van. He uses it for work and to do stuff with. So we're gonna go back with it and make it good for hopefully another 200,000. All right, so let's get to it. Alright, Torx plus 50. Do not use a Torx 50 socket. We'll strip these fasteners right out. Alright. Nasty bell housing. Okay, 13mm pump to case. Do a quick end plate check. Feels like it's about 25 to 30 thou. Fluid stinks. If you want, you can knock the front seal out at this point, but you don't have to. You want to continue with the teardown. 8mm here on the speed sensor bolt. Always replace your electronics. Never reuse these. I mean, this is probably the original speed sensor. And then 15mm on your extension housing to case bolts. Good. A little bit of the desert brought off the bench. O-ring seal. Alright, some units have these, some don't. Takes an O-ring in here. New O-rings will come in the kit. This one is hard as a rock. Alright, it's going to spin a lot more freely in the direction engine rotation than it will in the opposite direction that's normal. Alright, 8mm for your wire loom bracket. Alright, for your case connector, don't worry about reusing or trying to preserve the tabs. There's a special tool, but not necessary because you're never going to reuse wiring harnesses, especially on a unit that has over 200K on it. Alright, for servo, just go ahead, come right here, tap inboard, and then come at it. Then you're going to have your O-ring right there. Do the best you can to get this cover kind of out of the bore to the extent as possible, or as much as possible, so you can grab up on this O-ring with a pick. Alright, I go back with these with all Corvette servos. I don't use the old 553s or standard 553s that came in these things. Alright, doesn't matter if you pull it out or you break it. Either way, you gotta extract it. This one wants to be stubborn. Like I said, this thing's never been out. Of course, it wants to fight. Alright, scarf cut seal for your fourth clutch piston, or fourth gear piston I should say. So when I was talking about 553, that's what I was referring to. So last 3 digits there on the model number for the piston. This is second gear. Alright, you can go back with a shift kit. They'll give you different springs to use in the servo. Looks like this is the standard 2-groove piston. This is the most common kind. Count the number of grooves. That'll indicate how long that piston is. The longer the piston, or excuse me, the longer the pin, the fewer the grooves, and the longest pins have no grooves in them. Pick. So standard factory configuration on the servo. Don't forget your return spring. Alright, see what awaits us behind the pan. Alright, let some of that shit drain out. 13 millimeter, 16 of those bolts. Pan seems a little loose. Shop did not actually take this pan off. They just drove it and said, yep, it's done. So maybe somebody else had done a service. They used some sort of like pump to suck out most of the fluid from the pan. Nearly every one of these bolts is loose. Smoked. And that fluid, filter is part way out. Maybe somebody did do something in here, tried to service it. Maybe the owner, maybe somebody else. and you know, things didn't go as planned. Hard to say. Quite a lot of metal on that pan. Alright, no need to worry about your connectors. I mean, this is how you would take them off if you wanted to try and preserve them, but, you know, we're not trying to do that here. It's going to get a new harness. All new electrical components will be installed. Never reuse that shit. Alright, 10mm on most of these bolts except for here, 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 and here. These 3 bolts, 8mm, they are longer than all of the other bolts. They need to go back in those same spots. And like I said, I'm being rough with it because I don't care. One to accumulator housing. A lot of times if you take apart a unit that has transgo shift kit previously installed, the springs for the 1-2 accumulator piston will be broken. So that's transgo springs specifically. It's got a plastic piston here, always replace with an aluminum piston. Don't reuse your plastic pistons. I don't see the factory springs broken too much, to be honest with you. Even if you're installing a transgo shift kit, I'd be more inclined to reinstall the factory springs. I've just seen too many transgo springs broken over the years to trust them. Yeah, all these like seals and O-rings and such are rock hard from just, you know, years and years and years of use. Okay, 2003 was the last year of these dipstick stops. Before and up, the pan was contoured in this area, and there was a step designed into it so that the pan itself acted as the dipstick stop. Alright, 8mm. Pressure switch manifold assembly. Into the trash. Alright, carefully lift up and out on the valve body. There's 7 check balls contained within the valve body, or onto it I should say. Here's one. Here, 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 and here. Millimeter on our TCC solenoid pull down bolts. They run pretty tight. let's see what kind of spacer plate we have. 2000 was a change year, so it was a revision to the TCC PWM programmable clutch regulator valve in the valve body. So they switched to slightly different gaskets and a slightly different spacer plate. So if you're working with a 96 to 06 vehicle, you can buy Transgo's 4696 plate. It'll work on any year, 4L60E within that time period. So we have 01 and up gaskets installed. I know that because there's 2 letters here that are laser engraved into the gasket itself. 93 to 2000, they use the unmarked gaskets, and there's only 1 letter to indicate whether it's the valve body to spacer plate gasket or spacer plate to case gasket. So, I mean, this is technically not the correct gasket, I don't believe. I'm not super familiar with the 4.3 liter configuration specifically because I don't do them too much. I don't see them too often. Most of my stuff, 4L60E, 700R4 is, with the V8 applications. All right, factory accumulator spring and piston for 4th accumulator. And you can see how worn that O-ring was. I mean, I just pulled that right out. Typically, you need to persuade it out using that pin. So never reuse these 4th accumulator pistons. The pin bores like to wear. You also want to check pin bore wear in the servo too, if you plan on reusing that. But like I said, I would never recommend you reuse your 2nd gear servo, or servo piston rather. Stupid filters out of here. Okay, new filters for your EPC and your shift solenoids will come in the kit. I'll bother with the rest of that gasket later. Alright, 8mm on those hold down bolts for your low reverse the spacer plate. 15mm wrench for your selector shaft to rooster comb nut, and 13mm on the parking pole guide plate. I had that on the correct direction. It was just really tight. Real tight. Thought maybe I was going the other way with it by accident. Nope. Okay, that didn't fight me. Usually they do. If it does, just take a pry bar and carefully pry against the band, which is right here, so that you can get that selector shaft out. Alright, selector shaft seal. That's literally all I use this pry bar for. Alright, for the pump, just pry here. Now come right back. And the gasket came with it, but the gasket separated from the pump, so that tells me that there probably wasn't a lot of overheating, if any. Nothing recent. That's always good news. Alright, let's see what this pump looks like. 13mm. Most of these pumps need reconditioning. Most of them need both stator support, pump cover, whatever you want to call it, which is this half, the casting that's the stator's bolted to it. Needs remachining, resurfacing. as does the pump body, which is where the rotor and the slide are at. Let's see. This doesn't look too bad. It's got one fairly significant scoring, scoring line here, going all the way around the circumference of the surface, so it'll need to be dealt with. Here's your filter screen. Takes a new O-ring from the kit. New filter screen itself comes in the kit. Just taking these Teflon sealing rings off real quick. I also want to make sure that you're in the shot. Alright, so here's your top pump ring. 13 vein pump. So original rotor guide. The pump, rotor, and slide for these transmissions are actually fairly resilient, provided that there's not excessive wear in the pressure regulator valve. There's wear in the inboard balance spool in that valve, and if it's really, really bad, you'll see the slide and or rotor broken apart. It's one of the leading causes of catastrophic pump failure in these transmissions. Wear in one area leads to failures in another. Okay, we'll go back with it with a new set of pump vanes, new rotor guide. We'll inspect the rotor and the slide, though more than likely I'm just going to put a brand new rotor and slide kit which comes with everything that you just saw, so that we kind of start fresh again versus putting, rotor and slide with 200,000 miles on it back in. So we're not going to use the vanes. Some builders do reuse them. I'm not a fan of it. To me, it's just like putting dirty clothes on an otherwise clean body. So you can see the scoring. So that'll head to the machinist for reworking. Get all that scoring off of there, get the surface recut so that everything is perfectly flat and everything's true again. So when you buy the Corvette servos, it'll come with a new servo sleeve or servo housing. So you don't reuse the old sleeve or housing either. Alright, just jerk it up real aggressive. Here I'm talking about the input shaft to see if you can get the band anchor knocked loose so you can take it out. And we still have the input drum and whatnot in there. So and just dab up on it, yank it. Let's check out our band. I mean, it's definitely worn, but it's not smoked, it's not burnt. I mean, not bad for 200,000 miles. Alright, let's take a look at reverse input clutches. So 4 and 4 clutch and steel. I don't see these bad too often. Ford Warner. So here's your cushion plate, the bottom steel, clutch, steel clutch. So far, normal wear. Normal looking. So you see how the snap ring is clocked such that you have all 4 locking tabs engaged. That's how you want to put it back. Right, we'll deal with that later. And I'll take the piston out later. Okay, this thrust bearing, inspect it closely. It may need to be replaced, especially with a unit with this many miles, or if one of these transmissions was rebuilt and whoever rebuilt it set it up with way too much end play. The bearing is taking a beating. So what I'm trying to do now is extract and get the pop loose, that selective spacing right here at the base of the shaft, so we can check this drum to see if it's holding pressure or if it's leaking here where the shaft is pressed into it. They can be stubborn sometimes, and you got fluid creating a suction effect. So this is a number 68 washer. The smaller the number, the thinner the washer. And I want to say they're about 6 or 7 thousandths difference in terms of how thick they are from number to number. Alright, I'm going to get you a little closer so you can see and follow along while I air test this drum, or pressure test the drum, I should say. Alright, what I'm looking for, but what I don't want to see, is bubbles here in this pocket. So bubbles in the fluid would tell me that we have a leaking drum. Okay, here's our 2-3 feed. So right here, between this sealing ring and this sealing ring. There's the bottom sealing ring, this is the third from the top. Okay, that circuit's good, at least insofar as leaks here. So you want to do this, you know, with the air multiple times, because your first or second time you may not actually see any bubbles, but then once you do it repeatedly, the bubbles start to show up. So here's forward. Okay, nothing there. When we test the coast clutch, we want to put a finger and plug the forward feed. Okay, air staying trapped in there. Everything appears to be good. Let's investigate further. Okay, we got load release springs installed. So my policy on these is if I'm running the clearance down to like 35 thou or less, then I'm putting them back in. But if I'm at like 50 thousandths or so or more, then they're staying out. And then anything in between that, it's like a judgment call based on application, horsepower, and whatever else I'm doing with the transmission, and you know how the vehicle is going to be used and all that stuff. So, okay, this clutch looks to be normal. He didn't say there was any issues in third and fourth gear. I mean, look at these steels. They got what would appear to be a normal amount of wear. Maybe even a little abnormally light in terms of the wear, given the amount of miles on this transmission. So, alright, here's our forward clutch, and behind it is our boost clutch. And to be clear, this is a very awkward way to remove these snap rings. Not what I would recommend. Thing to do would be to have a hole in the bench, and that's what I normally would do, but I don't feel like moving the camera all over the place, so I'm doing it this way. Alright, let's take a look. So that was our first friction in our forward clutch pack. There's a base clutch. So top friction, steel. Now we see a little bit of slip, but nothing outrageous. So I think we actually did see the cause of our problems, and that is somebody used a shallow pan filter on a deep pan application. Let me grab that filter. So this is a shallow pan filter, and it was coming out of the pump. It was falling out because there was nothing holding it in place. The filters have an interference fit, a very slight interference fit with the transmission pan, so that the filters can stay in place. They don't fall out. So in this case, the filter, I mean, unless I see something else that contradicts what I'm saying here, the conclusion I'm coming to, whoever did that service should have put a deep pan filter. So you do see some heat here on the frictions, and this kind of heat, it looks like it was sustained in maybe 1 or 2 episodes, and hence the delayed engagement. So I gotta talk to the shop owner, see if the customer tried to service the unit just before he or she brought it, and see what's up. I'm gonna keep these aside, just to kind of play show and tell, so they can have a look at them as well. Okay, this is sprag rotation. Hold it like this. This must always freewheel clockwise and lock counterclockwise. The bearing goes right there. Look the coast clutch real quick. Coast clutch looks normal. It's perfectly fine. I'll dig those 3/4 clutches out of there too, just to have them. So all my customers, they want to see, kind of the evidence, see what I found in the transmission, have a look at the parts for themselves, which is perfectly fine for me. I have absolutely no problem with that whatsoever. And if you follow me on Facebook, I usually give, assuming you're like a quote-unquote friend of mine on there, I will give substantive updates, including one for this one, where I'll either shoot a quick video or pictures and, tag the customer so that they know what's going on with their transmission. So again, a little bit of transparency. It's a nice, nice customer experience to have, to stay in the loop and informed as to what's going on with your property while it's in my possession. So real high horsepower, go with the Sonic's billet steel coast clutch hub. These will crack up in here. Okay, check the gear. Check the inner race. This has to be mirrory smooth. Okay, bushings will be replaced. You can relieve or cut relief slots into the face of this and the rear sun gear to promote better lube to the planets. And then in here, check for wear, and wear shows up as the entirety of the surface all the way around, from end to end, being mirrory smooth. It's literally the exact opposite of what you want to see with the inner race. So if you see that, take some emery cloth 400 grit, go all the way around it multiple times until you got that cross hatching back. Alright, I'll deal with the bonded pistons, return spring assembly and all that later. The kit will have new bonded pistons. You do not reuse bonded pistons. Okay, never reuse bonded pistons, electronics, any other type of consumable, bushings, all that stuff gets replaced when you go through the transmission, assuming you're going through it 100% soup to nuts. All right. Interesting. I don't think this is factory original. I mean, all the kits, at least up until about maybe 2 years ago, all the kits came with snap rings that were painted yellow. That was new to me. I think the sun shell has been replaced. So bearing. Something fell down in there. Maybe a check ball. Okay, check this capture bearing. It will not come out unless you take the pinions out. So if you do that, then you're putting on new washers, new needle bearings, and you're overhauling the Planet. Check your splines. Check this area here for heat. Same with this. And then check side play. Check vertical plate too. I don't know what the spec is offhand, but there is one. Check this journal. Make sure it's not scored up. The Planets in these transmissions are pretty resilient, provided you don't suffer some sort of catastrophic failure due to either lubrication shortage or, you know, just beating on the thing like a red-headed stepchild. Assuming you're not doing stuff like that, you know, they'll last quite a while for you. Come here. Alright, reaction shaft. 03 and up, they had a step here for a large bearing that replaced this bronze thrust washer. This went away last year for this was 02. So if you're working on an 03 and up unit and you see that bronze thrust washer with a reaction shaft that looks just like this without the step, then you know that somebody's not only been through it, but they made off with the other reaction shaft, and that's no good. Alright, check here too for your 3/4 clutch hub, the ring gear for the front Planet. Make sure the splines are in good shape. Check these lugs. A lot of times I'll see heavy grooves dug into all these lugs by the 3/4 clutch pack, and you know, you'll have to replace this. If you see that, you don't want to reuse it. Alright, let's see the sun shell. What I'm looking for is signs of heat treatment over here. The aftermarket shells, they're heat treated, they're made in Taiwan, and they're perfectly fine for stock level builds. For anything high performance, you want to run a Sonic Smart shell. I wouldn't even waste any money on the TCI Beast shell. I mean, it's honestly not worth it given the amount of money you're going to pay. You're going to pay maybe another 20 bucks more, if that, for a rollerized shell that gives you another roller surface potentially in the case, which is what you want. Let me get this stupid thrust washer off of here. Struggle with that a little bit too blatantly. Alright, so you see the snap ring here? Of course you can't. Okay, you want to make sure that when you go back with it, it looks just like this. Both ends on either side of the anti-clunk spring. Alright, new battery. So you can grab up on the anti-clunk spring. I'm sorry, the snap ring. Don't want to grab up on the anti-clunk spring. We want to get the snap ring out so we can get all the rest of this crap past the anti-clunk spring and out of the case. And that's what was clunking around in there, was the booster cone selector shaft nut. Duh. We also had a check ball in there. Output shaft. Every once in a while you'll see either this set of splines or this set of splines have chips in it, so you do want to check them. I mean, I'm going to inspect this thing a lot more closely once it's clean, but just be aware of that. Same token, check your snap here and make sure it's not boogered up, make sure it's not damaged. Same with the output shaft splines for your slip yoke. That seems to be fine. Seems to be fine. So here's your rear gear set and everything else that's still in the case other than the low reverse piston return spring assembly for it. Get that out in a few minutes. Alright, center support. So got our low reverse clutch pack. Again, this is not a clutch I see bad too often, but anytime there's a no reverse condition, it's almost always this clutch pack that is burned or is burning. And the reason being is that the inboard most machine cut seal on the low reverse piston likes to harden, and then that'll allow for blow by, and you know, that's the end of the clutch. 704s, if you leave certain check balls out, or you don't put things back the way they need to go, then you can burn up low reverse in short order. Put that over there. We're gonna dig that band out of the trash. I'm just gonna stick it in the corner. So these steels are in good shape. Cushion plate, so far so good with everything internally. So low roller clutch rotation, hold your inner race. Okay, the race spins clockwise, but if you hold it, the support will spin counterclockwise. So that little screeching you hear, that's the sign of a very healthy low roller clutch. This is another low failure rate item. Okay, if the low roller clutch is bad, then chances are either the vehicle is being raced or otherwise beat on, abused, whatever, or it just so happened to wear out to the extent that, well, it was its time. But again, I think of all the 700R4s and 4L60Es I've ever done, I want to say less than 20 came in with destroyed low roller one-way clutch assemblies. Now this appears to be fine. Rear sun gear. Have a look at the Planet. Planet appears to be in good shape with pinions. Okay, they're spinning freely. I had this cocked sideways or upside down, and sometimes you'll hear the needle bearings when you spin the pinion gear, but as long as it's level and it's not making noise, you know, spin them multiple times just to double check, you're fine. Okay, the capture bearing seems okay, no bluing, no damage to the structure or to the locations where the pinions are pressed in. Now I've got two more bearings to study. So this is going to be your rear Planet to ring gear, and this is going to be rear ring gear to case thrust. And those bearings seem to be fine. You can replace the bearings in these, and certainly it's not going to hurt, obviously. But in my experience, they're typically pretty resilient. In other words, it's not something you're going to find yourself having to do very often, other than that input thrust bearing. That does take a beating, especially if end play was excessive. So front end play on these is 15 to 35 thousandths. You can run it down as tight as 10. Not going to hurt it. But if you're much more than 30, I would say try to tighten it up. You know, 35 is the absolute limit. Beyond that, you do run the risk of damaging that bearing to where it breaks up, or the bearing in the front Planet will break up, either the captured bearing or the front Planet to, you know, ring gear thrust. Either way, if that breaks apart, then the case, or I should say the unit, will suffer a catastrophic failure event. Because then, you know, gear train comes out of mesh up there and it eats itself. Okay, case bushing, always replace. All your bushings need to be replaced. Alright, I'm going to get the tool in there, get it set up, and then we'll take out that snap ring, and then, you know, put air in the low reverse feed to punch out the low reverse piston. Alright, have the tool in place. The end of the snap ring are roughly at the 10 o'clock position, so I'm probably going to have to block your view to get in there. But I will do the best I can to give you as much visibility as possible. So 90-degree snap ring pliers. normally this will just come out, but if it's stuck, if it gets hung up on the snap ring groove, just take like a screwdriver or hammer handle and punch it, and it'll come right out at that point. Alright, lower reverse is going to be right here. So just put air there, and it'll come right out. Okay, that's a tear down. It's kind of a quickie, so just wanted to, go through it, and had the camera handy, so I figured I would set it up. Why not? I mean, I do YouTube, so I should figure I would film at every opportunity, and that's what I do. So, moral of the story here is that don't ever use a shallow pan filter with a deep pan. That will cause all kind of problems, including those that were reported to us. So this thing's going to get a complete overhaul kit. So that means what we call a cowl kit, band, filter, clutch module, steel module. And the cowl kit usually doesn't come with a steel module unless you specify it. So just be aware of that. It'll also come with a pump body bushing, and I think a bushing for the reverse input drum, one of the two, if not both of them. It depends on what kit you buy. We're going to do a complete bushing kit like we always do, Sonics valving and boost valve, and more than likely going to need a transgo pressure regulator valve as well. It's a gently oversized drop-in valve. Those are great to bring back otherwise worn valve and valve bores in the pump. So we'll vac test and see if that's necessary, but I'm thinking after 200K it probably is. New hardened heat treated shell. Again, this is a van. He's not racing. He's just looking to use it for work or whatever. I'm gonna propose a couple of upgrades, including the Sonic Smart Shell, and see with the tech, and once he talks to the customer, see what he wants to do. Okay, we're gonna put a new reverse input drum in here. I didn't talk about the reverse input drum as far as like checking band surface and all that, because I never reuse them. They're almost always warped. So all new electronics, harness, pressure switch manifold, speed sensor, shift solenoids A and B, PWM solenoid, 3-2 control solenoid, and I think that's it for electronics. He has a new manual lever position sensor that's going to go on there as well. That's bolted to the outside of the case, and of course a new torque converter. So anyway, guys, that's the video. Thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions, comments, go ahead and leave them below. Otherwise, thank you so much for tuning in, and look forward to seeing you on the next one.